Hopefully we're good now. Stop raining. Perfect. Okay.
Over to Melanie. Thank you for being with us.
All right.
Do you want to notice the PowerPoint? Well, we're ready to go.
Yes.
As always, if you have questions or if you want the materials that Melanie is sharing with us tonight, please feel free to comment in the slide feed. We will get those to you. But also at the end, we will have a Q&A time for any questions that you have.
Perfect. All right. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to my in-person viewers. So that's always nice. As Pastor said, my name is Melanie Johnson, and we are going to go through something called the Sound Relationship House. And I'll explain a little bit more about what this is. This is definitely geared towards couples, married, dating. But I do think that there are some things that can be taken away for just other relationships as well. This doesn't necessarily have to apply if you're not married, not in a relationship. I think that there are things here that can be gleaned from to apply to parenting and parent-child relationships, friendships, work environments, those kinds of things. So, and again, I will explain here in just a second what all of this is about. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, and again, I won't go through the whole bio here, but as Pastor Zach said, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm the owner of New Hope Counseling Center. We have 2 locations in Crystal Lake and Huntley, and what I specialize in is treating couples who are looking to recover from a betrayal, an affair. So I pretty much only see clients that are dealing with that issue. And but I have a group practice with 9 other therapists, and we all treat a variety of issues and couples and individuals and kids and all of that. So I am also an approved supervisor through the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. And so I take on a lot of interns at my practice, and I really enjoy supervising interns and students and just giving back to the field of therapy in that way. So, all right, so I'm sorry the background on this one is a little bit tricky to see. So this approach of the Sound Relationship House, it comes from Doctors John and Julie Gottman. They have created, an empire is kind of the word that comes to mind, but I'll just read kind of their bio here. It's that they are pioneers in relationship science, and they have revolutionized our understanding of marriage, relationships, and couples therapy. They draw upon over 4 decades of breakthrough research with more than 3,000 couples. The Sound Relationship House theory is the foundation of the Gottman Method, which uses a practical approach to help couples break through barriers to achieve greater understanding, connection, and intimacy in their relationships. If you have ever done any kind of couples counseling or gone to a couples therapist, they most likely have at least some training in Gottman, or at least they have heard of this and have read books or know of this. So it's a very, very common approach to couples counseling. They've written lots of books and created all kinds of trainings for therapists. So one kind of interesting thing that the Gottmans have done, they're based out of Seattle, and they at one point had something called the Love Lab. out there. And so basically they set up an apartment and they would take voluntary couples to come and stay at the apartment for maybe a weekend. But they would, the apartment was filled with cameras and all kinds of research technology. They would mic the couples. They would, put all different, I don't even know, like heart rate monitors, like all different kinds of things to kind of monitor a couple, and they would observe them throughout the weekend. And what the Gottmans, they are especially interested in is how couples fight. They want to know how couples argue, and that is really the majority of their research, and we will talk a little bit more about that. But they wanted to see couples fight, and so they almost said, like, have a fight, like, go at it, we want to see. And so they really, that's with their 3,000 couples, that was done in that love lab, and so they really have done a lot of work to kind of see patterns and figure out ways that that couples can fight well and sort of recover from arguments well. So anyway, that's the Gottmans. And again, they've sort of become well known even just among people who aren't in the therapy world. So lots of people have read their books and stuff. So anyways, you can do more research or order their books on Amazon, I'm sure, if you'd like to do that. Okay. So your relationship is like a house. So that's going to be our metaphor for tonight. There's going to be lots of house metaphors. And sometimes when there is damage to a house, work needs to be done to rebuild that house. And so that's what we're going to talk about. This is definitely a lot of like rebuilding language. But again, even if you have a fairly strong marriage, a lot of these concepts can be still worked on. We all need to work on our marriage. So. All right, so I came up with just a couple of examples of things that might cause damage to your relationship house. The number one, most damaging thing would be a betrayal of some kind. Typically, this would be an affair, an emotional affair, a physical affair. But betrayals happen, honestly, in even small ways in our marriages and in our relationships all the time. So anything that's a betrayal of trust can cause damage. So it doesn't even have to be an affair. It can be some other kind of betrayal where trust is broken. Other causes of damage might be emotional or physical disconnection. Whenever there is arguments, if there is criticism, defense, contempt, or stonewalling. And this is what Gottman calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That's what he has named those 4 things because they are the most damaging things to occur when a couple is fighting. And those 4 things in all of their research are the highest predictors of divorce. So when they were observing all of those 3,000 couples in the love lab, they were able to determine within a 90% accuracy whether those couples would be divorced within, I think they say 7 years, but it's within a few years based on how that couple argues. So they were able to get very good at predicting, like, this couple is doing all of these things, criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. They have a much higher risk of divorce within 7 years. And then the last one that I put on here is just if you are a high conflict couple where there's just lots and lots of arguments or where the arguments escalate very quickly, then that can also cause damage, especially if those things are happening often. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. And I also did not put abuse on this list. I mean, that's obviously a given, any kind of physical, emotional, mental abuse. But we actually don't even recommend couples counseling when there has been abuse. And so the things that I'm talking about tonight are really not like, if you are in that situation, which if you are, I highly, highly encourage you to talk to someone, get help, get support, and get some professional help. We just don't even recommend couples counseling when there's been abuse, or recent abuse. So anyway, that's not on the list, even though that's an obvious cause of damage to the house. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so from many studies of successfully married couples, I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see. From many studies of successfully married couples, we know that in order to repair your relationship, there are 3 essential changes to be made. The first one is that you must increase your positive emotions just overall in life. And so I kind of just came up with, again, not an exhaustive list, but some examples of positive emotions would be joy, gratitude, serenity, hope, pride, awe, and love. And so again, if you are working on yourself individually to increase those positive emotions, having those positive emotions just overall in your life, your relationships are going to be better, but also there will be, that will help when you do have arguments. The second one is that you must decrease the negative emotions you have during disagreements. So oftentimes when we are arguing with our partner, common feelings that come up might be annoyed, contempt, which I touched on before is one of those 4 horsemen that are very dangerous. And I define contempt in a relationship as kind of a general disgust for your partner. So it's kind of that, oh, I can't stand you, that kind of attitude or feeling. Hatred and anger. So those are all very common negative emotions that might come up during a disagreement. And so we really want to work on decreasing those negative emotions during disagreements. And then the third one is you must increase the positive emotions and repair efforts made during a disagreement. So again, going back to those positive emotions, when we're in a disagreement, we really want to try and access those more positive emotions, even if it's hard, or even if it's okay to maybe feel sad or something like that, but we really want to try and access those positive emotions and then repair efforts made during the disagreement. And we'll talk a little bit more about what repair efforts are in a little bit. All right, so this is a little bit hard to see, and again, we'll go through each of these, but this is just a picture of the sound relationship house. And so you can see, I have my little handy dandy pointer. On the side here, we have trust and commitment. So those are really the pillars of the relationship house. You really cannot have these other steps unless you have trust and commitment. So, and I'll address those more at the end. But I mean, honestly, if you don't have that, it's going to be very difficult to do these other things. So at the bottom here, we're going to do something called building love maps. The next one is sharing fondness and admiration, turn towards instead of away. There's something called the positive perspective, which we'll address, managing conflict, making life dreams come true, and creating shared meaning. So I've renamed some of these in the rest of the PowerPoint, so it's not exactly that wording, but it's the same basic concepts. All right, so now we're going to get into what makes up the house. So the first thing is the foundation. You cannot build a house without a foundation. So that looks like getting to know each other again. And if any of you have been married for a significant period of time, number one, we kind of take for granted that we know our partner because we've been with them for so long, right? And to some extent that is true. Of course, you know each other very well, but we evolve and we change over time, right? So my interests or my desires might be different now than they were when I first got married, right? And so we have to continue getting to know each other and never taking for granted that we know our partner just because time has passed. So really getting to know each other again. Devoting time to the relationship, that seems like a given, but we're going to be doing friendship building activities, okay? So things that are fun, things that kind of rebuild the friendship. And then going back to that increasing positivity, and when we start to do that, healing begins. And again, that increasing positivity, I'll talk a little bit more about here. So, but those are kind of the foundation. That's where we want to start. There we go. Okay, the next one are the walls of the house, and this is what I call a shared fondness and admiration for one another. So we are going to increase our fondness for our partner and our admiration for our partner by expressing appreciation. We can do that verbally by verbally thanking our partner for things that they're doing, sharing how we appreciate them. We can do that through writing. Maybe we send a text or leave a note about things that we appreciate about them. But who doesn't love to be appreciated, right? We all love to hear that. So that's a great thing. And it's fairly easy. And you can even just find like the smallest thing. It doesn't even have to be, thanks for taking out the trash, or, thanks for making the bed this morning. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything big. Increasing gratitude and positive communication. So again, just having that cheesy attitude of gratitude, right? Of thinking about why you're thankful for your partner, your life together, those kinds of things. Praising your partner for doing well. I also think we don't do that very, very often. So that's an easy thing to do. Encourage relationship enhancing thoughts. So this would be if I'm out at the grocery store and for whatever reason, a thought about my husband comes into my mind, encouraging relationship enhancing would be I'm really thankful for him, or I'm so glad that, I have him in my life. So it's kind of like when your partner is brought to mind, that you are thinking positively about them instead of, I can't believe he, didn't make the bed this morning or left his dirty socks on the floor or whatever. Instead of kind of going that route, we're going to sort of encourage those relationship enhancing thoughts, and then expressing fondness and admiration in everyday life. So, saying I love you, I'm thankful for you, I'm grateful for you, I'm happy that we're together, those kinds of things. So these all seem very obvious and even oh, well, that's easy, but we just don't do it. And I've been married 14 years. I know that, we don't do all of these things all the time either. So life gets in the way, and we just tend to stop doing these things after a while. So again, seems obvious, but we just don't do it. Okay, the next part of the house is the insulation. And so this is about deepening the connection. So now we've kind of rebuilt a friendship. We can be around each other. We're happy around each other. Things are light and easy most of the time. We've worked on ourselves to kind of change our thoughts and think a little bit more positively about our partner. Now we want to work on deepening that connection, which sometimes requires being vulnerable, this really requires work for some people. So the first thing that we can do is do something called build an emotional bank account. So you can call it a bucket or a bank account, but essentially, if you know the ways that your partner feels loved by you, so whether that's, you're aware of the 5 love languages or whatever, if you are aware of the ways that your partner feels loved, which if you don't know, ask, okay? If you don't know how your partner feels loved by you, ask them. They would probably love to share that with you. But we can sort of make deposits into their emotional bank account by loving them in the way that they feel loved. So we tend to love others in the way that we feel loved, right? So if my primary love language is acts of service, I might be more likely to love my partner in that way because that's how I feel loved, so why wouldn't you feel loved that way? But that isn't really how it works. Oftentimes our partners feel loved in different ways than we feel loved. And so every time I love on my partner, in the way that he needs to be loved or feels loved, I am making a deposit into his emotional bank account. And so one way to kind of think about that, if you want to take an inventory, is share this concept with your spouse, and maybe, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, you have a conversation and you ask, how's your emotional bank account? Is it in the red? Is it, have I been doing a good job? Do you feel filled up? And so that's kind of what that is. That's a good way to kind of measure how your partner is feeling loved by you or not feeling loved by you. So again, that's how we deepen the connection with one another. Another way is just working as a team. So that can be in lots of different ways, a project, or maybe as parenting, co-parents, you're working as a team. The next concept is called turning towards each other as opposed to turning away. And this doesn't mean in a physical way, although it can. This really means more in an emotional way. So if I'm turning towards my partner emotionally, it means that I am making, and this is what the Gottmans call making a bid for a connection, and that will come up in one of the other steps. But essentially, it's me saying, hey, I want to connect with you. I'm turning towards you emotionally, mentally, and it can be physically too. But it's like I am here, I see you, I'm connected to you, I'm looking at you, I want to connect with you. So, and lots of things get in the way of that. Phones get in the way of doing that. TV, our kids, our jobs, our extended family, lots of things are vying for our attention at all times. And all of those things can get in the way of sort of turning towards our partner. So that's what that means, is turning towards each other as opposed to turning away. And turning away looks like ignoring them, cold shoulder, just not even paying attention, not connecting. So, and then the last thing on deepening the connection is allowing your partner to influence you. So again, this can look a lot of different ways. I think of if one of the partners maybe has a big decision to make about a job transfer, or maybe it's a financial decision or something like that. It's going to your partner, getting your partner's input and advice, and allowing them to influence your decision. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to do exactly what they say that they think you should do, but it's getting their input and allowing them to offer their influence. So that's how we also can deepen connections. All right, the next part of the house, we need doors. And so this is what I call the positive sentiment override. And this is, again, kind of going back to what they were talking about of increasing positive thoughts. And so we do this by managing and reducing our stress, and only we can control that. Nobody else can do that for us. So how are you doing with that, just in your day-to-day life? Challenging distress maintaining thoughts. So that would just be like any thoughts that you have frequently that cause you to feel in distress. So maybe that's, I'm having trouble even thinking one off the top of my head, but, just anything about life, or even and especially about your relationship. So, oh my gosh, we're never going to get along, or I can't stand him or her, or, life is too hard right now. Anything any thoughts that you think frequently that maybe cause you to feel some sort of stress or be in distress, we want to challenge those thoughts and replace them with something that's a little bit more positive. The other thing on here is starting rituals of connection. And so that can be anything from having a cup of coffee every morning together, to attending church on Sundays, going on a date night once a month, doing a yearly big trip somewhere together. So any kind of ritual that you have as a couple that will help you to connect, those are good things. And then processing failed bids for connection. So I just mentioned this in the previous one, where we were talking about turning towards your partner instead of turning away. So one of the ways that we turn towards our partner is that we give a bid for connection. So that might be, hey, do you want to go for a walk after dinner, right? I'm making a bid for connection with my partner. It can be, hey, do you want to do a date night soon? It can even just be like, hey, pass the salt, And so what happens is that when we make a bid for connection, with our partner, and our partner is not in a place to accept the bid. So maybe they say, get the salt yourself, or no, I don't want to go on a walk with you. I'd rather sit here and watch my TV show, or whatever. That can hurt, right? Because we are putting ourselves out there to try and connect with our partner. And when that is not responded positively, that can put us in a negative place. It can hurt. It can, that might upset us in some way. And so we need to have a way to sort of process any failed bids for connection. And so sometimes that means, if you're in therapy, maybe that's something you would address in therapy. Maybe you would talk to a friend about it. Maybe you would just go be by yourself for a little bit. And process it, or maybe it's bringing it up and talking with your partner. Hey, that hurts when I ask you to do something and you don't want to do it. That hurts. So it may be talking to your spouse too, or your partner. Oh, oops. All right. The next one is the nuts and bolts of the house. So this would be conflict management and regulation. So this, the first one is differentiating solvable problems from perpetual problems. So a statistic that Gottmans have given us is that 66% of the things that we fight about in our marriage are perpetual, which means for as long as we are with them, we are probably going to fight about it, okay? And so again, these can be very little things to big things, right? Finances, parenting, family, in-laws, those kinds of things. So I sort of take comfort in the fact that like a majority of the things, that it's very normal to have things that you disagree on. Like 66% of the things that you disagree on are going to be things that you will probably likely always disagree on. So what the Gottmans suggest is focusing on my math is not good, the 33% of the arguments that we have that are solvable, okay? So focus on those. We want to differentiate, so we want to understand this is a perpetual problem. It doesn't mean that you can't address that or talk about or try and solve those things. We can do that. But those perpetual problems often lead to escalated fights because we've fought about this for 20 years and, here we are having this same argument again. And so it really doesn't most of the time go anywhere. It just ends in the same way. So if we can figure out what are the problems that we can actually solve, that's a great start there. We want to catch the 4 horsemen, which again, to remind you, was criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And so stopping those things, paying attention to when we're doing them. And again, this is when we're arguing. We want to learn how to have structured listening. So again, that's something that is good. Therapy can help with that. Communicating without blame. So it's one thing to say, you're never home by dinner time. You always work late. I can't trust you. Why can't you just get home on time? That's a very finger pointing, blaming sort of way to complain about, have a complaint. Versus, I feel really disrespected when you say you're going to be home in time for dinner and then every single night you are never home, or you're rarely home for dinner. So that's a very different way. So learning how to communicate your complaints without finger pointing and blaming. Learning how to repair and soothe. So sometimes that just means that we have to learn how to soothe ourselves when there's been an argument. And again, sometimes that is just saying, I need a break. I can't, I'm getting too upset, and go take a walk and then come back and try the conversation again. Compromise and understanding your triggers. So again, a lot of times triggers are buried into some of these perpetual problems that we've been fighting about for years, and it gets brought up in every single fight we have. So learning what triggers you, learning what kind of raises your blood pressure, what kind of really causes you to escalate your thoughts and feelings during an argument, understanding what those are, and then dialoguing peacefully about the perpetual problems, which if you're a high conflict couple, you probably are going to need to see a couples therapist to learn how to dialogue peacefully about those perpetual problems. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, next we're going to go to the windows. And so now we are going to, so once we've, again, if there's been damage to a relationship, oftentimes there are escalated arguments, even if the arguments are about something that didn't cause the wound to the relationship or the damage. But again, so once we've kind of gone through these steps, we've rebuilt the friendship, we've learned how to manage conflict better. Now we're in a safe place. We now feel safe and secure in the relationship because there's been repair and healing. And so now we can work on creating a shared meaning together. And so what that looks like is establishing connection rituals. So we've kind of figured out, okay, great, coffee every morning, that's perfect. Doing a monthly date night, great, we've got that down. Yep, we're gonna do an annual vacation. So now we're sort of established them, they're built into our relationship and into our daily lives. We can establish goals and plans because once you feel safe and secure in your relationship and any wounds have healed, you can now start to feel safe enough to look to the future because it's like, I have hope that we are going to actually still be together. And so now we can talk about goals for the future and plans. And then also sharing dreams, ideas, and values and honoring each other. And then I think this is our last one. So the roof is relapse prevention. So we're going to try and keep moving forward and sort of, healing from any damage or wound that has been done to the relationship or the house. And we do that by continuing to practice Thanksgiving and appreciation. We can do that by spending time together, emotional communication, using solid repair strategies when we do have an argument, because every couple fights. There's just not a way to not do that. So once there's been an argument, you can repair fairly quickly from that. And then the markers of divorce are all reduced. So again, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling. And that's, again, called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which if you just Google that with the name Gottman behind it, you will find a lot of information about that. So those are kind of the markers of divorce, according to Gottman. So I just wanted to touch really quick on the trust and commitment. So again, to keep the walls, to keep those pillars of your house up, we need those, and so we want to make trustworthiness a main priority in your relationship. That it's been said, I read a quote that trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. So trustworthiness is really so important to a relationship, but once you've lost it, it is hard to get that back, and it's earned in drops. So really making sure that you are preventing your relationship from betrayal and being very, just conscious of that, and making trustworthiness that a main priority. We want to act to maximize your partner's well-being. We want to know that trust is built in small positive moments. Avoid negative comparisons. So this would be like, oh, well, Sheila's husband doesn't do that, or Sheila's husband's a better, he does all these really romantic things. You don't do that. That would be a negative comparison. Generate frequent thoughts and acts that cherish your partner's positive qualities and minimize your focus on their negative faults, which, that's, again, marriage is hard. So that's something that happens a lot. Okay, so given all of this information, and I know that it's a lot, but marriage is incredibly hard work. I think that anybody who is married will tell you that. It's just really hard. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong if it's hard. It just is, it's hard. What are some areas of the sound relationship house that you and your partner do well? So thinking about, we've got some really great rituals of connection. We can, we don't use those 4 horsemen when we argue, those kinds of things. And then what are some areas that you and your partner need to work on? And it's okay to not be perfect in all of these areas. You can yourself even just focus on 1 or 2 things that you can work on in the next few weeks and see, what might change in the relationship, or even just how you feel about your partner. And we can only control ourselves. We can't control our partner. So we want to just sort of take this information and see how can I do a better job in some of these areas. So that is all I have. So I don't know if there's any questions, but that's...
Thank you, Melanie. That was very wonderful. Thank you. We do have some questions that came in. I do want to apologize for folks watching online. We had some internet cutting in and out of the storm. That's okay. We'll get the full version uploaded immediately after this presentation.
I don't think your mic is on. I mean, it is, but we can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Mm-mm. It's like staticky through the...
Hello. Well, here, do you have a question while I play the microphone?
Do you have any questions? Good, good. Yes. Okay. Yes. 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 Yep. Yes. Okay, yes. Yep, good. It was a good reassurance, isn't it? Good. Yeah, yeah. I can explain the love maps. Yeah. So, yeah. And what's your name? Chris. Okay. So, the question was, so the Gottmans have a book called oh shoot, I just forgot it. 7 Principles of Making Marriage Last or Work or something like that. Yeah. And so one of the things that they talk about, and actually this was the first one on I think that was one of the things on the house was the love maps. Oops, I can go back to that. But I think it's broader than that, so building love maps. So essentially, the idea is if you think of your partner, or even yourself, but if you think of your partner in terms of like life, birth to death, right? There is a lot about her that you know, and maybe some things that you don't know, right? That's possible, even if you've been married for a long time. So building your love map is essentially, in your mind, sort of seeing all of these things about your partner, learning about them, right? So, and it can be as simple as like, college stories, or tell me about something in your childhood that you remember fondly, or, tell me about a time when, you and a sibling had a big fight, or, it's kind of those personal stories that maybe we do know and maybe we don't. But essentially the idea is that you're getting to know your partner through building a map, right? And so instead of just seeing it as like this linear thing, it's like, oh, this is over here, let's visit this area and this area and this area and this area. And so it's like you're kind of putting all the pieces together, right, of your partner. So that's one way to look at it. Obviously they describe it better. But building a love map is essentially getting to know your partner, even if you've been married for many, many years. Yeah. So and they have a list of questions in their book of just really great, like, just get to know you questions. Yes, exactly. Yeah, what's your partner's social security number? I don't have mine memorized, I can tell you that. Yeah, exactly. So it's even just those little things, or what color is your spouse's eyes, right? It's like, gosh, I used to know that. What's your favorite book or movie or food or color? So again, as I said before, we just assume that we know our partner because of time, and that just is not true. So, yeah.
Okay, we got it working now. There we go.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I was saying, before the microphone decided to stop working, we did have some technical issues, but the full version, uninterrupted, will be uploaded shortly after this presentation. But we did have some questions come in.
Okay.
So one question is, they started with an observation that communication seems to be the center for a lot of these steps of the house. How can you do this authentically without, or after communication has deteriorated in the relationship, like with stonewalling?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's really hard. And that's, before I started only seeing couples who were looking to recover from an affair, that was the number one reason that couples came in. We need help with communication, right? And communication can deteriorate in lots of different ways. And so I think the first place to start is you cannot control the other person, right? So if your partner is prone to anger, any of those four horsemen, criticism, defense, stonewalling, contempt, you can only control yourself. And so a lot of times, and again, I would highly encourage, there's some really good videos out there, some really clever animated videos about the four horsemen, and so you can find a lot of information out there. But you can only control yourself. So figure out how the things that maybe you tend to do, like I gave the example of the criticism and the finger pointing, it's easy to say, you always come home late, right? Instead of saying, I feel disrespected when you come home later than you've said that you're gonna come home. So typically using always and never that's just gonna the other person's gonna be on the defense. That's not true, I don't always come home late, right? And so you're not actually addressing the real issue here in that you feel disrespected. So focus, if you can't change your partner, which we can't, but I mean, if you don't have influence, if they're not willing to listen or not willing to do counseling, all you can do is focus on how you bring up a complaint. And so again, if you can do that without finger pointing, if you can do that by avoiding those four horsemen, and they talk a lot more about that in the 7 principles of making marriage last. So they address that a lot more in there. So I think the short, wasn't a short answer, but I would say just focus on yourself and how you are bringing up complaints in the relationship, and try a different way. Try to bring it up in a different way and see what happens.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes, and this isn't a question, I just want to note for Living Waters folks, I have both the 7 Principles book and the 5 Love Languages book in my office. If you just want to take a peek, because I know Amazon won't let you see so much.
Perfect.
So just want to see a peek of that if you're interested in looking into more of that.
Perfect.
I'm going to ask the question I ask everybody. How has the pandemic affected relationships?
We've found, 2 things, and they're on the opposite ends. Literally either people have been brought closer together and they have found, wow, we actually do like each other and we actually can both work at home at the same time. This has actually been kind of nice, and we've been able to get to know each other again, and we're forced to spend time together. So I think that's one way. Probably, and then, and I couldn't even say more often, or it has really caused a lot of stress, and especially for couples who were already unhealthy before the pandemic, spending more time together can, definitely bring out just, a lot of issues. So I think either people kind of got much closer and, or things maybe got worse. So, yeah.
Okay. The last question that was sent in was, what can communities, for example, communities of faith, do to support healthy relationships?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, healthy relationships. I think that these types of things are best done in community, right? And so we always want to know that we're normal. We always want to hear oh, good, okay, so this thing that I'm experiencing in my marriage is normal. Okay, good, that feels really good to hear that. So, being in community, small groups, any kind of marriage ministry, and I don't know what is offered here or, what has been in the past, but marriage ministry and just checking in. How are you guys doing? How are you doing? And sometimes churches, might offer a sort of a marriage mentorship program where maybe an older couple mentors a younger couple. That's an option. But even just sometimes asking, how are you guys doing? Do you ever want to go get dinner and we can, talk about things? So, I think it's done in community and just asking sometimes, but I think, there's more formal ways to have support, but maybe a marriage mentorship or something like that.
Great. Do you have any other questions?
Anything else?
In-person folk?
Thank you for coming.
Well, then thank you, Melody, so much for being here, braving the storm, and
We made it.
yeah, and sharing all this with us. This is wonderful. We're going to close in prayer. I will say that we will have our series continue again next month. We're about to finish lining up a speaker, but I don't have it for you tonight. So watch our social media for updates on that. So, but we will be on the second Monday of the month. So, let us close in a word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you for the gifts of relationships. Please empower us to do this building work, this communication, these acts of love, to let them blossom into what you would have them be. You are a foundation for us. Please help this community be supportive for folks and a safe place for those who need help. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And finally, again, if you do want any resources like the PowerPoint from tonight, it's very colorful and very nice. I enjoyed looking through it myself. Or if you have any questions or want to follow up with Melanie, please let me know and we can put you in contact with her. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Yay. Yeah, thank you. You know what? I don't think I do.